What makes a Pokemon good? I'm serious. You might think you know, but do you really? How many factors lead to a Pokemon being used? People play to win, which makes them want the best Pokemon, but how do these people select the best Pokemon for their teams? I've looked into it a little bit, and I think I've boiled it down to 5 factors. All these factors have certain degrees of importance in the power, actually be better if we called it viability, of a Pokemon, and it wouldn't be very useful or reasonable to start with the bottom. So let's begin by going all the way to the top, base stats. At their most simple definition, base stats are numbers that determine just how Pokemon do damage, take damage, and when they move. There are 6 base stats. You have your offenses, attack and special attack, your defenses, your defense, special defense, and HP. Your defenses determine how you take damage, and your HP is the number that goes down when you get hit. Finally is a speed stat. Whenever 2 Pokemon want to make a move, the Pokemon with the highest speed stat goes first. Each stat has a maximum of 255, and the number of all your stats combined is your base stat total. Naturally, the Pokemon with the highest stats are used, because Pokemon is all about dealing and taking as much damage as possible, so you can tend to get an idea of how powerful a Pokemon is by their base stat total. But simply looking at base stat totals, some numbers can get confusing. For example, why is Garganacl better than Colossal? Both are tanky rock types that excel in physical defense and have similar stat totals, but Garganacl is clearly better. There are definitely many reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is that Garganacl has stats that let it do what it does better. Neither Pokemon really use their special attack stats, but Colossal has the same special attack as attack, and Garganacl uses those stats to have substantial boost to its defense and attack, while only sacrificing a bit of HP. This is an example of base stat spreads having an impact on viability just as much as totals, so keep in mind that the best Pokemon have both good base stat totals as well as good distributions. For a final example, let's look at Chi-Yu. Apart from sounding like a sneeze, Chi-Yu has a great base stat total of 570 and sacrifices points in HP, physical attack, and physical defense, which allows it to invest points in great speed, a huge special defense, and a monstrous special attack, making it one of, if not the most powerful sweepers in Generation 9. Obviously, this is just a part of Chi-Yu's strength, and another part is its great offensive. Number 2, typing. A Pokemon's type is another one of the factors that determines how it takes and deals damage. When an attack is used, the type of the Pokemon's move and the type of the Pokemon being hit are both taken into account. Damage has certain multipliers based on the type matchups. When a water type uses a water type move on a fire type, it deals double damage. When a fire type uses a fire type move on a water type, it deals half damage. Also, there is a hidden stat called the same type attack bonus, which means that if a Pokemon uses a move of the same type as it is, that move's power is boosted by 50%. Just take that into account whenever thinking of a Pokemon's type. Every Pokemon has either 1 or 2 types, and certain types are better than others. For example, my notes say here, for example, an example of a bad type would be the normal type. It has a combination of not being able to do super effective damage and not resisting any types. Meanwhile, a good type, which Wolfie VGC ranked as the best type in Generation 9, is the Steel type. Also, for more explanation as to what types are good and bad, check out his video, link in the description. In short, the Steel type has a vast array of resistances, and decent offensive coverage, being one of the only types to hit the powerful Fairy type for super effective damage. A Pokemon's type can affect its viability either positively or negatively. For example, Jolteon is currently the most used Pokemon in Generation 9 singles, and part of its success is partially influenced by its incredible defensive typing and stab pairing. Meanwhile, Tyranitar is by no means a bad Pokemon. It has incredible stats and a great spread, but its rock and dark typing is f***ing awful, being weak to over a third of all types in the game, including the strong types Fairy, Fighting, Water, and the Big Steel. Despite all this, again, Tyranitar is a great Pokemon, and part of that is because of its very powerful number 3, ability. Every Pokemon can choose between 1 and 3 abilities, and they have varying degrees of importance to a Pokemon's strength. Some abilities are literally useless, like Illuminate, and some abilities are completely broken on both sides of the spectrum. Why not look at some examples? Jolteon has the ability Good as Gold, which makes it immune to every single status move in the game. This is complete bullshit. The easiest way to make a Pokemon weaker in battle is to lower their stats, and this ability makes Jolteon almost completely immune to that. On the other side, let's look at Regigigas. Look at its stats! Isn't it powerful? No! Look at its ability. Slow Start halves Regigigas' attack and speed for the first 5 turns of battle. You're not going to get 5 turns against a competent opponent. This ability sends Regigigas from what would probably be a strong Uber's Pokemon to some of the lower tiers of the competitive ladder. These are 2 really egregious examples, but abilities can do almost anything, including Regenerator, get a third of your health back every time you switch out. Clear Body, makes you immune to having your stats lowered. Rough Skin, which hurts Pokemon when they make contact. Frisk, what's your opponent's item? Let's find out. Cheek Pouch, eat your berry twice. Sandstream, there's a Sandstorm now. Overgrow, Blaze, Torrent, Swarm, deal more damage before you die. Flame Body, burn enemies that touch you. Multiscale, full health, attacks do less damage. Sturdy, survive at least 1 hit. Water Absorb, water attacks, I guess not. Imposter. Technician, your shit moves are shit no longer. Pressure, opposing Pokemon can use moves less. Swift Swim, move faster in rain. Chlorophyll, move faster in sun. Sand Rush, move faster in a sandstorm. Slush Rush, move faster while it's snowing. Speed Boost, move faster. Electro Drift, move faster in electric terrain. Just kidding, that's a move. Friend Guard, protect your allies during a double battle. And Runaway. It does nothing. Those are a few examples of abilities that have at least some viability on certain Pokemon and Runaway. As you can see, abilities can do anything for a Pokemon and can severely impact it in every which way. But even if a Pokemon has great stats, great typing, and a great ability, it's useless unless it has a good number 4, Move Pool. The Move Pool is basically a fancy way of saying what moves a Pokemon can learn. Pokemon can either be saved or destroyed by their Move Pool. For example, Among Us, despite its mediocre bulk, is an example of all the other factors working together and why one factor isn't everything. Good defensive typing, great ability, and, for this factor, access to one of the most powerful moves in the game. Most moves that put Pokemon to sleep have 75% accuracy or less, but Among Us has the move Spore, which allows it to put a Pokemon to sleep 100% of the time. It can't be overstated how valuable this is, with sleep being possibly the most broken mechanic in the game. This adds to Among Us' viability and makes it one of the most powerful defensive Pokemon you could use on your team. On the other hand, Flareon, infamously, learns absolutely no moves. It does get the powerful Flare Blitz for Fire Stab, and it also gets Body Slam for decent neutral cover. And that's it! The other physical moves it learns are either too weak, like Trail Blaze, or easily blocked, like Dig. I say like, as though Flareon has physical moves of other type than those, but really, this Pokemon just doesn't have the tools to properly succeed. A good defensive rock type like Garganacl can easily tank all of Flareon's attacks. Sometimes, Pokemon can just be missing a single move that it needs to unlock its full potential. Kyurem Black was legal in the OU tier, which is standard play, for 3 generations, despite having a base stat total of 700, including a massive base 170 attack, simply because of the moves it learns. If you look at Smogon's recommended moveset for Generation 6 OU, it suggests no physical stab moves. This is because of Kyurem's learn set. While Dragon Claw is good, it's by no means exceptional, and Outrage locks Kyurem into one move and is often too much of a commitment to use consistently. Perhaps a little shorter than the other segments, still a valuable part of a Pokemon's viability. Now, let's move on to the most complex segment of this video. Number 5. Meta. Basically, how good is this Pokemon when compared to other Pokemon? Define what this Pokemon does, and then see if a Pokemon does it better. I know it may sound a little confusing, but let's put it like this. Every Pokemon technically does something, but some Pokemon are more viable than others because they do that specific thing better. This is the only factor that is not set in stone for all Pokemon at all times. The meta changes, and what some people believe to be a good Pokemon eventually gets outclassed. No matter how good something may seem, this will happen to it eventually. Except for Blissey. Blissey is perfect. I'm not even sure how to describe this factor. Let's start with one part of this. Power creep. Because Game Freak wants everyone to use the new Pokemon, they make the Pokemon of each generation stronger than the last. Because of this, naturally Pokemon from an earlier generation will eventually get outclassed. Take, for example, Weavile. Weavile used to be an incredibly good OU staple, with even some viability in Ubers, but in Generation 9, Xianpao was added, which simply does Weavile's thing better. It has the same offensively powerful Ice and Dark type, but has more speed and bulk, which makes it a better Pokemon overall, as if Weavile fails to OHKO its opponent, it's likely to be OHKO'd in return. But Xianpao is able to take some neutral hits, and some resisted hits fairly well, letting it use its strong offenses even more. This is why Weavile is considered less strong than it is now, even though it hasn't gotten any weaker. It's simply because another Pokemon does what it does, but better. At this point of the script, Weavile has dropped all the way down to RU, not because what it does isn't good, but because something else does it better. Another part of this is new developments in the meta. Essentially, the meta is the collection of Pokemon that are generally considered the best in any specific tier. Sometimes a Pokemon often seen as subpar by most people, when in the right hands, can be discovered to actually have a great role a tier or two up. In Generation 3, for a while Breloom was stuck in borderline hell, until people discovered its ability to revenge kill the tier's strongest Pokemon, Tyranitar, with Mach Punch, as well as its ability to abuse the Sleep and Focus Punch combo, being the only Pokemon to learn both a sleep-inducing move and Focus Punch in OU and not have 65 attack. Now, Breloom isn't by any means the best Pokemon, but can be a viable member of any team, outranking some of the tier's staples like Magneton and Heracross. Another, more extreme example is Porygon in Generation 1. On paper and in practice, Porygon is a shit Pokemon, being quite powerful and literally the second worst tier of RBY competitive, up there with Pokemon like Drowsy and Poliwhirl. But it does have a solid niche in the OU tier as one of the better Snorlax counters. Snorlax is the second best Pokemon in RBY and is necessary on every serious team. Using some strategies that I'm not willing to go deep into in this video, as I just started school again, we just hit 2,000 words in this script, and that took me 3 tries to read, Porygon can completely stall out many Snorlax sets, simply because 32 is bigger than 24, and Gen 1 is whack. Because of this niche, Porygon is on the Smogon viability rankings as higher than Pokemon in better tiers, like Raichu or every fighting type in the game. As you can see, Pokemon can become better even if nothing about them changes, but people learn how to use them better. Every Pokemon has potential, and maybe even you can find out what a Pokemon does for your team and use it to your advantage. This is a message to you, the viewer. If a meta Pokemon doesn't exactly do what you need it to do, experiment around. See if anything regarded as less viable does what you need, as any Pokemon to a certain extent does have a niche and can do something that could be valuable to your team structure. In summation, at its simplest, the power of a Pokemon can be boiled down to 5 qualities. Their stats, how much damage a Pokemon can dish out and receive, and when they move in their turn bracket. Their type, what damage does this Pokemon take from certain types, and what types have boosted damage. Their move pool, what moves does this Pokemon learn. Their ability, what does their ability do for it, and how does that help or hurt them specifically. How does this Pokemon stand up to other Pokemon of a similar power level? To a Pokemon of a higher power level? Does this Pokemon do what it does best? If not, what else can it do? These are all factors to take into consideration with every Pokemon and every team you build. I know a decent bit about competitive Pokemon, but I am by no means an expert. If you have a suggestion to make or think I got something wrong, please tell me. Nobody is perfect except Blissey, and I'm always open to suggestions. For this video, and videos to come. Also, if you've watched this long, you clearly enjoy what I do, so please subscribe. Any support helps when you're this small of a channel like me, and I want to join the YouTube Partner Program before 2025. So please at least consider it, as well as liking, sharing, and leaving a positive comment down below. With that, I don't have anything more to say, so I'll see you later. Bye.